So we know even in the work that President Obama did, and with both DACA and DAPA, that they were far from what we would want to have in a permanent pathway for people to get to become a naturalized citizen. So what is your view? I know we're talking about the here and now, but let's look a little further ahead. And what are the pathways, or what is the work that your organizations have been doing in terms of what those pathways should be, and how have you been advocating for those?
Actually, the DACA recipient, they all know this might be a temporarily, and it might not pass later on, and it might not be a law. So I think everyone is expecting it might go to the right, it might go to the left. So I think the community, the DACA community, are prepared to see we like it to be on the right and be successful and help them to become citizen. But if it's not going to happen, they are aware of that because it was an executive order, it wasn't a law.
What about your organizations, Cynthia?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very tricky question in a way, right? It's a great challenge because for our kind of organization, there is a short-term emergency situation at the moment. It could be an emergency that is going to take place in the first 6 months to 1 year, which is how do you not only educate people to protect themselves, to arm themselves with the information and the tools necessary so that they don't get swept away by fear, by bad decisions, by even voluntarily deporting themselves, because that happens. It happened already. It was happening it's happening even under the Obama administration, and it could happen even worse, right? So for us, there's a short-term emergency response, which is everything from mobilizing the information necessary out there, but also working with the state legislature to make sure that they're willing to protect the gains that California has had on everything related to immigrant protection. And we're not just talking about undocumented immigrants, we're talking about all immigrants in California. But for CAPC, and for me personally, I think the long game is still immigrant integration. Like what Nahla was saying, we have the good things that we're already doing in terms of assimilating people, in terms of encouraging them to really work, through this new life that they already have. That should go on because it's a good thing. I think to the extent that we can protect those gains, we should. There are mechanisms. The American public is, of course, not always that divided when it comes to immigrants. As the speakers before us have already said, it only seems to be the politicians most of the time who have a problem with it because they've been playing football with immigration politics for a long time. But survey California, survey even some of those states that lean anti-immigrants, and you do have a very sympathetic population that are willing to accept that because immigration is part of our DNA, let us work with it rather than against it. So what are the practical things that we can do in the next 4 years? We have a program called the Workforce Innovation Act. And what it does is, we call it easily as the Workforce Development and Education Programs. These are training programs that are provided to low-skilled populations, immigrants included, so that they can either access retraining programs or adult education and English language programs. Let's work with that. Let's educate our communities that this is this highly funded program that exists out there that not many of us know about and are availing of. And it is entirely possible that this new administration may not even mess with that. It's about $4 billion a year in funding, and California provides a counterpart funding for that. Some of it or a bulk of it actually go to community colleges and what they call regional workforce development boards. So this is a great pathway. This is one of those long games where if we do it right, to the extent that there are direct service or social workforce development providers in this room, because Irene and I were talking earlier, why was some of the vote in this election so emotional around the jobs issue, for example? Did we fail somehow in these training programs where people felt so disaffected in those localities because they couldn't move from one kind of skilled job to another? You know, when jobs become mechanized and information technology takes over, weren't we able to make the leap? And so I think there is that, you know, and a host of other opportunities. But if you're interested, really look up Workforce Innovation Act, and it is kind of an unwieldy structure. But I think that's one of the opportunities in which we can help people just think a little bit more about practical steps they can take to survive what's coming. We're kind of this weird doom and gloom moment at this point, because we have so much big words that sound bad and dark and horrible, and we have very limited specific information with which to respond. So what we do, we create contingency plans, and then we say, okay, you know, as Anne said earlier, we're not going to mourn anymore. We are going to mobilize, and we tell you we're ready. We're working with the State Assembly. Our legislator has said very strong things about what California wants to do. And we hope it is something that will remain civil, that will remain something where we figure out where we have common grounds rather than how we can, you know, go into this confrontational phase. Because believe me, I come from a country that experienced dictatorships where we would march in the streets and 100 people would disappear because the military has abducted them. I don't know that we want to, you know, if we can prevent things from getting there, we should. Because I think, as I said earlier, if America fails, it will be a very, very unfortunate situation.
So